Hello and welcome to the Where I Fit In story for the History Americas project. We got the Fireside edition here, and I'm Ian Pearlswick, and I'm here with my mother, Heather Pearlswick.
Hi, Ian.
I'm here to ask you a couple questions about the history of our family. So first, where did your side of the family come from, and how do you know it?
Well, my mother's side of the family comes from England, and they immigrated through Canada into New Hampshire and Massachusetts. My father's side of the family, I don't have as much information about. I know that his mother is from the South, and her family was in the South for many generations. His father's side of the family was from New Hampshire, but I don't really know much more than that.
Okay. How do you know this?
From the stories they've told and growing up, different things.
Okay. How many generations can you trace back from your parents? And if so, can you recall names, places of birth, and maybe even birthdays?
On my father's side, I can go through my great-grandparents, and on my mother's side, I can maybe go through great-great-grandparents. I know most names. I have birth dates and those kinds of things written down. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Well, let's hear the names. I want to hear it.
You want to know? Okay, let's see.
Just try your best.
Try my best. Okay, so your grandmother is Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
Your great-grandmother was Dorothy Evelyn Jessie Headwells Hackett. I swear. Because she was the only girl of 6. So she got all the girl names. And then her mother's name was Mildred Head, I believe. And I don't know her mother's name.
Okay. All right. Do we have any veterans in our family?
Yes, we have lots of veterans. Your grandfather was a veteran of the Vietnam War. Both of your great-grandfathers, well, actually you have several great-grandfathers, were all veterans. We were talking about it earlier when you brought up the project, that you didn't realize that Bumpy, who is your great-grandfather who was here for Christmas, who's 94, is not your biological grandfather. And what the story there is that, let's see, I don't know how to put it. Mimi, your grandmother's biological father, died in World War II when she was 6 months old. He never met her. And Gigi remarried Bumpy when she was about 5.
Okay.
So it's the only father she's ever known, only grandfather I've ever known. So I guess you just never realized that he wasn't your biological grandfather.
Oh, okay.
But he was also, Bumpy is a veteran, and your other grandfather was a veteran. He was a helicopter pilot.
Cool. Can you tell me any stories about our family?
One sort of interesting story is that, let's see, he would be your great-great-grandfather was a gardener at Buckingham Palace.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. He immigrated through Canada, so he was living in Canada when your great-great-grandmother was there. It's a long story how she got there. But anyway, they married and became the caretakers at the house at Anne of Green Gables. So that's kind of
it's kind of cool.
neat. And one of your, I guess he'd be your great uncles, was actually born there at that house.
Oh, that's cool.
But your grandmother wasn't. They had left by the time she was born.
Okay. And last question, do we have any genealogical records, and if so, where are they located?
I have some copies of some things. Uncle Cecil, who was your great-grandmother's who is your great-grandmother's youngest brother, had done a lot of research, and I have copies of all that upstairs.
Cool. All right, well, thank you for joining Fireside Edition with Ian, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, and welcome again to the Where I Fit In the Story History of the Americas project. Once again, it's Fireside Edition. I'm here with my father, David Pearlswick. David, lovely for you to join us today.
Hi, Ian. Nice to be here.
It's getting a little bright by the fire in the tree. Had to put on my sunglasses to protect the old UV rays. Got a couple questions to ask you, David.
Okay.
Where did your side of the family come from, and how do you know this?
Well, my side of the family my father's side of the family came from Russia and Germany, as far as we know. It's a little unclear. know this really through stories and some information from especially my grandmother, who's written up a lot of it for me. On my mother's side, everyone came from Italy, and that's really just from, again, stories and information from my grandparents.
Cool. So do you know how many generations you can trace back from your parents? Well, maybe names, places of birth, and birthdays?
Well, I would say on my father's side, I probably really just know my father's parents, which would be my grandparents, and I don't really recall my great grandparents. I mean, I know the names, but I don't really know don't know the dates and everything. And then on my mother's side, it would be really just back to my grandparents' level. That's where I would recall.
Could you share the names with us?
Let's see. My mother's name is Veronica. My father's name is Stephen. My grandparents on my father's side, his name was Sumner. They called him Sonny. And Belle was my grandmother. And then on my mother's side, it was Andrew Terfuri and Veronica Terfuri, which is the same name as my mother, who's Veronica Terfuri.
Cool. So, do we have any veterans specifically on your side of the family?
Yeah, so on my side of the family, my father was a veteran. He was actually ROTC during college and then served in the Army really during the Vietnam era, but did not go to Vietnam. And then his father was a Marine, and he was a Marine during World War II.
That's cool. I'm sure they wear glasses like this, maybe. Can you tell me stories about our family?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that it is interesting, and it was not necessarily a good story, but my grandfather was actually a POW which is a prisoner of war during World War II. And one of the stories that's been told, he wouldn't talk about it much because I think it was a very hard time.
Was this on your father's side?
This is my father's father.
Okay.
Yep, and he was a Marine, and he was captured by the Japanese, and he was actually put into. He was about 6'2", I think, 6'1". I mean, he was pretty tall, but he was placed into a cage that was too short for him to be able to stand. So he was crouching for a long time, and it was just a very sad thing.
Dang.
So
interesting story, but kind of sad.
Yep.
Okay, and final question before I got you, David. Do we have any genealogical records of your side of the family, and where would they be located?
We do have some genealogical records. So the biggest thing that we have, which is a little bit interesting, is my grandmother and her twin sister both have written up, before they passed away, they wrote up a lot of the history that they remember, and they just hand wrote those records. So we have those upstairs. And I do have like a copy of my father's birth certificate, but beyond that, we don't really have a lot of records.
All right, well, that's all that we got time on the Fireside edition. And David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.